in San Francisco is the week, January 23rd of 2006, that 8 people were charged and arrested. 2 of them are longtime political prisoners. Herman Bell, who was arrested in 1973 in New Orleans, has been down for 34 years. Jalil Muntaqim, who was 19 in 1971, the week before this police officer was killed in San Francisco, has just marked his 36th year as a political prisoner. Both former Panthers. They are part of this case. They are not the only people who have a history with the Black Panther Party or the Black Liberation Movement who are political prisoners today. That's also what we're about, is creating a consciousness. The case fits into the larger picture. We're going to talk about that. Currently, we were able to, through a level of mobilization and building of support and community concern, obtain bail for 6 of the 8 brothers. Neither Herman Bell or Jalil, having been locked up for all these years, were bail eligible because of charges that they're doing time on from New York State. The bail started at $10 million each. And through a showing of community concern and a willingness of people in particularly the Bay Area to put up property, eventually those amounts were brought to what was manageable. And so that's why Hank can be with us today. And everybody who is no longer in San Francisco County Jail is engaged in some level of organizing like we're doing here. Over time, we've done events all over the place.
I just want to thank all of you for coming. My name is Maisha. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm part of the organizing committee to support the San Francisco 8. And there's someone here I haven't seen since I was like a child, so I'm kind of blown away right now. But anyway, so I think what we're trying to do on this tour is really talk about the ways that this case should be essential in all these different organizing activities that are going on that may not seem to intersect, right? But they really do. Because one thing for me, the way I look at this case, you know, when I first visited Jalil, he asked me, so why are you involved with this? And my answer was, how could I not be? Because really this case is so critical on so many different levels. It's about the torture, like Claude said. It's about what this country is trying to legalize and trying to make okay within our borders, which we've already seen happen outside of our borders, right? It's about using the court system to say that we can go after you with any type of tools that we want to, even if it's seen as illegal under our Constitution. So it's about that. But it's also about the message that it's trying to send. And I think this is really important because for me, as a younger organizer, and there's young folks in the audience which I'm really happy to see, it's really about targeting young people and young activists, right? It's about sending a message of, if you even think about trying to do something that's different from the program we set up for you, we're going to go after you. If you even think about dissent in a way that we don't agree with, in a safe, nice, packaged way, we can go after you. Just like they've done with Kent's son. And I'm so happy he's here on this panel with us because this is a further example of how this case intersects with other things that are happening in this country, right? So it's about targeting young folks. It's especially about targeting young folks of color. And when you talk about this case, we have to talk about the racism of this case. It is not by accident that we're going after former leaders of the Black Liberation Movement, right? It's really about making inaccessible part of our history. So if they can disappear 8 men who are active in the Black Liberation Movement, if they can say that we can throw them away at the later stages of their life when these men are grandparents and great-grandparents, what does that do for me as a young person? Who do I go to then to talk about what the 60s and 70s were like, what that was like to be engaged in that level of radical activism? Who do I go to? You know, if Hank is incarcerated or if Cisco is incarcerated. So it's very purposeful what they're trying to do. So this case is also about the different ways that our government is attacking the Black community. And just interesting, you know, we haven't had a lot of time on this tour, but we were just driving around and just seeing how gentrification is happening everywhere, right? I mean, I don't know Portland at all, but, you know, I was talking to Ken a little bit about just the neighborhood, and I'm seeing buildings that are locked up, you know, buildings that are empty, lots for sale. And this is what I understand to be a historically Black community, right? So there's all these different ways that this case is impacting what's happening to us in our communities. And the last thing I want to say around how to think about this, you know, Claude touched on it. This is also about what they have done to political prisoners in this country and what they are still trying to do. So while we have a huge victory, you know, I don't know any time in my life where I've ever known a Black man who was accused of killing a white cop to be released on bail. You know, and six of these men are out now, and that's a huge thing. That says a lot about the weakness of the prosecution's case, I think, you know, for the judge to say, well, let's take 10 million down and get it down to something where we can let these guys out. That's huge. This is a racist country. We would never do that. You know what I mean? So that's a big victory. But Herman and Jaleel are still inside. And just like so many other of our leaders in this struggle are still inside. So this case is just as much about continuing the fronts that all of us are doing around work around political prisoners. This is an extension of that. You know, this is an extension of the type of tactics our government uses against folks who, you know, are radical and who want to see a different type of world. And just last thing I want to say is this is happening everywhere. You know, we're going to talk about the case with Ken's son. This is a perfect example of how this all intersects. And this is happening in New York. You know, there's grand juries being called right now for young activists who are engaged in the struggle for a free and independent Puerto Rico. This is happening there, you know. This is happening to other countries and other parts of the country who are being extradited from different places, being called on old charges. So if you think that this is going to be isolated, it's not. They're already doing it, you know. I've been learning a lot on this tour just around the Green Scare and what's been happening up here around that type of activism. So, you know, find ways to make this connect to the work that you're doing. That's what's going to keep this case relevant. That's what's going to keep this movement broader. You know, there's no reason we should be doing our radical work in isolation. You know, this is all connected. And it seems very overwhelming. If we can start to pick at the parts that are all connected, that's how we can really grow this struggle and this movement. So thank you again for having us.
How long was Kent be working, going to schools, talking to the students? We'll be going to the colleges, talking to the students when they show films in San Francisco 8. You know, but to answer your question about the Black media, as a citizen, you do have a right to write in an opinion page.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I do that all the time with the Black paper here in Portland. You know, every time when the bench goes on, I'm studying peer pressure. Let me put this in, you know. And it works. So it's up to you to make the changes. You know, like they say, power to the people, the Lord, the workforce. You know, because what's happening with them can happen with you. It can happen with your children. And the time is now to stand up and be counted. You know, make every day a positive day. Because, I mean, you see what's going on in Iraq. We got many loved ones over there. It goes from Iraq, going down, back to the United States, back to the San Francisco 8, back to Alabama. You know? Right. You don't just stop there. What's going to happen tomorrow? What will happen with these children right here? You got to think about your kids. It's time to do something now.